how to be sensory friendly in the area of sight and vision. Typically, with visual processing, information comes into the eyes and gets processed by the brain. And the brain decides what's important and where that focus should be. It's kind of like a camera focusing in on a subject. It blurs out the information in the background and really zooms right in on that subject. Let's consider the different types of visual stimulation in the church environment. Number one, lighting. This is a huge one in the church. Now, let's remember from our first video, over-responsive. So if we were over-responsive to lighting, that means too much information is coming in, and it's like just a fire hose of lighting in your face. So it can be very uncomfortable. It can literally cause pain to people, so much that they're actually not even able to attend a service or an event that has painful lighting. It is actually a need and not a preference. And this is one of those areas that's really important to consider in that way. It's kind of like we were talking about in the first video, where we have our eyes dilated and we can feel that light as pain. It's the same thing. If you've ever had a migraine, you know how painful light can be. It's very much the same for people with sensory processing issues in the area of vision and light. So lights can be very overwhelming and cause an overload. Fluorescent lights are particularly bad because they cause a little flicker. We generally can't see that, but people that are hypersensitive to light can see that flicker of the fluorescence, and it's very difficult. Also, strobing or bright lights can be extremely overwhelming. So how can we help a person that's having that hypersensitivity, that over-responsiveness to light? We can adjust the light. Dimmer switches can be really helpful because then we can get the lighting just right for people, so people can still be able to read and do what they need to do, but it not be so harsh. So we can really lower the lighting. We want to get rid of fluorescent lighting if at all possible, but we can also use natural lighting, and really just in general, warm light is best. If we can't change the lighting, then we can change awareness and we can raise awareness. So maybe we could say something like this in our church. We want everyone to be comfortable and do what they need to do, and we understand people have different sensory needs. So it's okay in our church if you need to wear sunglasses or put on a ball cap to shield the light out of your eyes or wear a hoodie. That's okay in our church. Another thing we can do is in the classroom environment is use lamp lighting. We also want to be really conscientious about strobe lighting and really bright concert type lighting. We need to warn people if we're going to use that type of lighting because they may not be able to attend if we're using strobe lights or really bright lights. So that's how crucial it is to really think about our lighting. Now remember, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have that under-responsiveness. That's where we're not getting in enough information. So thinking about that in terms of our lighting, we want to think about it's a drought. They're not getting enough visual cues from their environment. So things like a spotlight or a focus light can really help a person to be able to bring their attention to what we want to bring the attention to. We can also use things like a laser pointer or a pulpit light. We can dim the congregational light and bring up the stage lighting. So this can really help people attend and focus to the subject. Now let's also talk about visual clutter. We can have over-responsiveness to visual clutter as well. And remember, over-responsiveness is that flood of information coming in, too much information coming in. So if we have a lot of decorations on the walls or even overhead in the ceilings, that can be really difficult for people that are getting too much visual information in. So we want to be really careful about that. Also, busy floors, busy rug designs can be very difficult. Lots of posters on the wall, bright colors, moving objects, flickering can all cause overload or over responsiveness, even a meltdown or a shutdown. So we want to be careful about those things. It's really like we've experienced in a large store where there's things literally floor to ceiling, just stuff packed in, harsh lights, just too much stuff to process. You've all felt that exhausting feeling of that, and that just even overload after spending too much time in a store like that. And that's how it may feel for people that have sensory processing issues if they're over responsive to visual clutter. So what we can do is create a minimalistic design. We can still have a beautiful area, but we want to make it purposeful and really think about what we're putting out visually. We want to keep everything simple, neutral in our walls and our designs for our floors. Also, it really helps if things are clean and organized, so we want to put things away that we're not using. Also, it can be helpful to cover up with a cloth or with a beautiful screen things that we don't really need to look at that time. I also want to bring up another really important point when it comes to visual processing or over processing of vision. And that can be that some people cannot listen and look at the same time. So we want to be careful about saying things like, look at me when I'm talking to you, because a person that is over responsive to vision may literally have to choose. They can either listen to you or look at you. They cannot process both. So we want to be really conscientious about that as well. And sometimes people that have that over responsiveness to vision will benefit from a simple fidget that they can hold and just look at while they are trying to listen. And that can really be helpful to them. So on the other side, that other side of the spectrum for visual clutter, we have that garden hose again, where it's under responsive. We're under responsive to the visual cues in our environment. We're missing out on those visual cues. So what can be helpful there is using visual cues very purposefully. So we want to direct attention to where we want people to look and learn. So bright colors to highlight and bring focus to those areas. We also want very purposely placed visual cues to highlight the speaker or the teacher. Novelty can be really helpful too. So changing things like the signs a little bit for the color, changing fonts, changing location for a visual cue. Also, we can be drawn visually to movement. So we want to use that to our advantage in our demonstrations or object lessons. So one rule of thumb I like to think about in considering vision is, are we adding calm or chaos to the environment? So let's think a little bit about a specific area of the church, such as a foyer. I think this gets overlooked a lot, and a foyer is so important because it's the very first thing people encounter when they come to your church, and it can literally be like a brick wall where a person literally cannot enter if there's too much sensory overload or difficulty to be able to come into the building. So we want to look at the foyer. Is the lighting okay? Is it warm and inviting, or is it harsh lighting? Are the rugs on the floor, the design of the floor too busy, or is it a nice neutral design? Is it too much when they're coming in? Too many words, too many bright colors, too distracting and overwhelming? Also, a foyer can be very crowded, so we may want to offer a different entrance or allow people to come in early or late to the service to avoid that visual congestion. So I hope this is really helpful to you as we think about vision and light and how that affects people with sensory sensitivities. I'm Charla, your friendly OT, and I'm so happy to consult with you with any needs you may have regarding your ministry events and making your church sensory friendly.